Part 2 of 3, The Depth Below. They say silence isn't empty. Down here it hums. The desert surface is a lie, all sun-bleached innocence above and miles of whispering metal veins below. Beneath Groom Lake's cracked skin, tunnels stretch wider than the stories told about them. You could drive a convoy through and never scrape the walls. You could lose a decade down there and never touch daylight again. I didn't believe the underground stories until the night I heard the engines beneath my feet. The ground vibrated softly, like distant thunder that never rolled away. A pattern of tremors, rhythmic, mechanical, alive. Someone or something was moving beneath the desert. And whatever it wasn't staying still. They call it the Sublevel Project, though no one I've met dares to use the name directly. It exists only in inference, shifts in supply orders, contractors who vanish after a month, electrical loads that spike at midnight and vanish before dawn. The government line is predictable, no such facility exists. But then, so didn't Area 51 itself, until they ran out of ways to deny the obvious. The deeper stories say the tunnels connect Groom Lake to other facilities, Tonopah, Nellies, maybe even White Sands. A subterranean highway for secrets. If that's true, it's not just a base anymore. It's a buried city. The man without a name returned after a long silence, older, gaunter, and quieter in ways I didn't know a person could be. He ordered coffee and sat like someone expecting the walls to listen. "It's not about hiding," he said. "It's about containment. Some things you don't want wandering." He told me about a section under the southern ridge, a lab without corners. Everything curved inward, like being inside the shell of something that used to breathe. The walls weren't built. They were grown, layered from materials that refused to age or corrode. The air there was cold and tasted metallic, and every step hummed faintly as if the floor was waiting for instructions. He said the deeper you go, the quieter it gets. Not from insulation, but because the air itself stops carrying sound the same way. You can scream, and your voice just folds inward, eaten by the place. The researchers call it acoustic damping. He called it a warning. He wasn't supposed to see what was stored down there. But everyone breaks a rule eventually. He described a chamber lit by blue-white light so bright it felt cold, and in the center, suspended by magnetic fields or something more complex, hung a fragment, a wedge of dull metal no larger than a brick. Around it, instruments blinked in steady patterns, but none of the readings made sense. The material bent every test. It was heavier than its size allowed, and lighter than its density predicted. The only thing it obeyed was itself. "It's not from here," he said quietly. "But it's been here a long time." I asked if he meant a recovered artifact. He didn't answer. He just looked at the window like he expected it to darken on command. "They're not studying how it works," he finally said. "They're studying how not to wake it." That was when I realized the legend had shifted. For years, people imagined alien craft stored under hangars, discs, triangles, silent silver ghosts. But what if those were just the delivery systems? What if the real secret isn't the ships, but the material, something alive enough to resist being dissected, a piece of physics that refuses to behave? The tunnels, he said, were built downward because distance wasn't enough. Shielding failed. Fields leaked. Machines nearby lost calibration for no reason. So they buried it deeper, wrapped it in layers of lead, alloy, and prayer. It still pulsed. You could feel it through your shoes if you knew when to stand still. Contractors on the surface sometimes spoke of power drops at odd hours. Lights flickered even when the generators ran full. Sometimes the clocks drifted backward for a few seconds, then corrected themselves. Local distortion, the report said. The technicians joked it was haunted. The physicists stopped laughing after the first time the timecode looped and recorded an event that hadn't happened yet. I visited one of the perimeter workers once, a radar technician who monitored non-traffic. He showed me a screen filled with noise, a shimmering static band that pulsed every 31 seconds. "That's below the ground," he said. "Radar shouldn't bounce back from soil. But it does from something metallic. Something big." The hum never stopped. It changed pitch with the weather, almost like it was breathing. Rumors about the vault have been whispered since the late 1960s, long before Lazar's story made headlines. They say the first object wasn't found in Nevada at all. It came from the desert, yes, but a different one, a crash site in New Mexico or maybe Siberia, depending on who you ask. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the same material shows up in multiple places, in fragments too consistent to be coincidence. One story claims the fragments aren't debris. They are seeds, parts of something designed to assemble itself when it senses others of its kind. That's why they're kept apart in separate labs, deep underground. If the pieces come too close, fields align. And when that happens, things above ground start to move. It sounds insane, I know. But so does a dry lake that glows faintly under a full moon, and yet Groom Lake does. Satellite photos capture it, a soft bioluminescent haze that no chemical test has explained. The soil there is infused with something, as if light itself has been leaking upward from underneath. The deeper I looked, the more the world above began to echo the one below. Birds stopped flying over certain areas. Compasses misbehaved. Cell signals warped. People living on nearby ranches spoke of nights when the stars dimmed all at once, replaced by a pale wash that hovered just above the horizon. Then there are the lifts, trucks seen vanishing into the earth where there are no structures, only flat ground and, according to seismic data, hollow space. Drivers don't talk about them. Maybe they can't. Maybe there's nothing left of them to talk with. One night, the man without a name broke his own silence again. "It's not alien in the way people mean," he said. "It's not little green men. It's physics that doesn't care about us. We're ants with a spark plug trying to rebuild lightning." He told me about the first activation. It wasn't a flight test or an experiment, it was an accident. The field went live for 47 seconds before they shut it down. In that time, every magnet within 50 meters flipped polarity. Fluorescent bulbs glowed without power. A man standing too close was pulled 6 inches off the ground and dropped like a puppet with cut strings. He lived. Mostly. They sealed that sublevel afterward, built another beneath it, and moved the material again. But the hum never left. It followed the facility like a pulse under skin. For decades, sightings above the desert mirrored the experiments below. Each test left ripples, not in air but in gravity itself. Lights moving at impossible angles were side effects, energy bleeding upward through layers of rock and denial. The watchers on the ridges saw the aftermath of physics being persuaded to do something unnatural. There are things worse than proof. One of them is proximity. I asked him once if he ever saw a craft assembled from the materials. His eyes twitched in a way that made me regret the question. "They tried," he said. "It worked once. For 8 seconds. Then it wasn't there. Then it was again, but not the same way. Like it had remembered being somewhere else." He showed me a sketch, nothing detailed, just a faint outline. A smooth lens-shaped hull, too perfect to be man-made. Around it, arrows denoting directions of movement that curved inward like gravity folding its own instructions. You can't steer something that bends where forward stops meaning anything, he said. Maybe that's why the underground city keeps growing. Every time they learn something, they need another layer to contain it. The tunnels are deeper now, deeper than any geological survey admits. Some say they go miles down, into caverns that existed before the base, before even the military found the place. Ancient hollows, conveniently waiting. In those depths the air changes. The pressure builds. The silence becomes heavy enough to feel. There are stories of workers emerging pale, trembling, unable to explain what they heard, sounds that weren't sounds, voices with no language, harmonics that resonated in the bones. One described it as a choir made of electricity. Another never spoke again. The hum I felt that first night hasn't stopped. Some nights it's low, distant. Others it's so strong that pebbles dance on the windowsill. I moved farther from the base months ago, but I still feel it, faint, in the soles of my feet. He told me that was the point. It's spreading, he said, like an echo trying to find its original note. When I asked what happens if it finds it, he didn't answer. He just smiled, not cruelly, but sadly, like a man watching a candle burn down to the wick. The desert doesn't tell secrets. It buries them. But sometimes, when the wind pauses, you can hear the ground breathing. They say Groom Lake is expanding again. New structures, more sealed hangars, deeper shafts. The official explanation is routine modernization. But the blueprints leaked once, just for a moment, before they were buried under classification again. In the diagrams, one label stood out: Containment Axis, Project Echo. No one knows what it means. But the hum under the sand has a rhythm now. It's no longer random. It's counting. And whatever it's counting toward, I think we've already passed the halfway point.